Each Monday, I go over the biggest risers and fallers in average draft position, aka ADP, in best ball markets. I'll decide whether I'm buying or selling these players at their new prices and why. The idea is to get you up to speed very quickly on what's happening out there in drafts and how to adjust. Let's begin with the biggest best ball risers from the last 7 days. First one I want to talk about is Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara up 2.1 spots to 72 overall on Underdog. This is fallout from the Kendry Miller mess. Kendry Miller pulled his hamstring early in camp, hasn't gotten back in practice. The quote that went viral on fantasy Twitter was Dennis Allen saying Kendry, quote unquote, needs to figure out how to stay healthy because you can't make the team when you're in the training room. I think people have taken that quote too far. I mean, first, Dennis Allen's just ripping a ton of his guys publicly this offseason, not just Kendry. Second, Kendry Miller was a 2023 round 3 pick in the NFL draft. Alvin Kamara will almost certainly be gone next season. Jamal Williams will be 30 in April. So if we zoom out, cutting Kendry because he's hurt would be rash, would be silly. I don't think that's likely. Now, is Kendry actually good? Can he still stay healthy? I don't know. But he's going undrafted in some leagues I see now, which makes him even more interesting for large field stuff. I have not been taking Kendry at all in small field stuff. Anyway, back to Alvin Kamara. So there's no doubt he's in decline as a runner, especially given the state of the Saints offensive line. I just don't see how Kamara's rushing efficiency can even be league average this season. And then we also have Jamal Williams, my close personal Instagram friend, who coaches love to use too much and love to use at the goal line. So I have not taken much Kamara at all, especially on half PPR Underdog. I'm more interested on DraftKings where it's full PPR and those, 7-catch, 35-yard receiving games are worth a lot. But Kamara goes so high there on DraftKings. We're talking 54 overall. I just can't take him over T. Higgins, Dalton Kincaid, Mark Andrews, Rashee Rice, Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, etc. And so that's left me with very little Kamara, which is a little scary. But given this price on a 29-year-old running back with goal line concerns, I'm fine with it. Can't have everything. Second riser to talk about is Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs up 1.3 spots to 51 overall on Underdog. Also up a couple spots on DraftKings to 42 overall. Rookie Marshawn Lloyd has also been falling and is going to start falling really sharply now that he aggravated that recurring hamstring injury or issue in the preseason game Saturday. The thesis of the Marshawn Lloyd play was always that he would run circles around dusty A.J. Dillon in camp, causing Dillon to be cut, which I think is still possible, and then earning, 30, 35, 40% of the snaps that Matt LaFleur likes to give his RB2. But given how banged up Lloyd has been, that outcome is becoming less likely. At one point, I had over 50% Lloyd, most of it in the 160s and 170s. As his price rose, I started seeing crazy things like Lloyd in the 120s and the 130s. As his price rose and things looked shakier, I stopped taking him, down to 26% now on Lloyd, which brings me back to Jacobs. If Lloyd isn't going to push Jacobs, and I'm not ruling that out, but it doesn't look great right now. But if Lloyd's not going to push Josh Jacobs and A.J. Dillon can't play, which I think everyone knows, we could see some really strong usage for Josh Jacobs in a really good offense. I take some Jacobs on DraftKings when he slips to the mid-40s and I don't have another running back yet because there are some wide receiver values I like later in the draft, and I don't want to have to pass on those. On Underdog at pick 51, I'm totally fine with Jacobs there in the right builds. The place where I'm most worried about Jacobs is in home leagues. His ADP in home leagues now is 25 overall. That's probably a pass for me. Prefer Pacheco, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, etc. I would note that the Packers starters played 3 snaps in their first preseason game. Josh Jacobs had a carry, a catch, and stayed in for the third down on those 3 snaps. If we extrapolate that usage to a full game, which, clearly is the right thing to do, he'd be the best fantasy player ever. But yeah, we'll have more preseason usage stuff. Be sure to check more on Twitter and the changelog, the rankings changelog for that. And then on Thursday or Friday, Evan and I are going to do a rankings change show, and we'll talk more about the preseason usage stuff then. Third riser is Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker up 2.2 spots to 62 overall on DraftKings. This one stems from coach speak. This new Seahawks regime just cannot stop gassing up Kenneth Walker. Every day there's a new quote about how great he is, how they got to get the ball to Walker, etc. And then in the preseason game, Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant, Kenneth Walker, they all rest. Zach Charbonnet plays. He only played 6 snaps, but he did play. He also played a snap on punt coverage for what it's worth. My take on this is that Charbonnet will continue to handle most of the third down and hurry up type stuff during the regular season, but Kenneth Walker is going to ice him pretty good on early downs. Kind of like a role that Joe Mixon had with the Bengals. Maybe a little bit worse, but kind of like that role Joe Mixon had with the Bengals. And that could be really profitable given Walker's running ability and the goal line work. I've definitely backed off Charbonnet a little. I'm down to 17, 18% there now. Still like him for a shred of standalone value and then big time contingent upside if Walker ever goes down. And Charbonnet is cheap. I mean, he falls to the 150s now pretty regularly. On Walker, when I think about running backs in the dead zone, and that's where Walker goes, I ask myself, are they actually talented? Can they be explosive enough to score 30 fantasy points in a game? Yes, I think the answer on Walker there is yes. I ask myself, is he only going here because of projectable volume? You know, can he be replaced by someone who's not on the roster yet or someone who is on the roster? And no, I don't think that's the case on Walker. Can this dead zone running back catch passes? I don't think Walker is great there, but 56 catches in 30 NFL games, it's not terrible. So yeah, if I show up in round 6 without a running back, you know, really on either side, if I show up in round 6 without a running back yet, which I definitely don't love, but it happens plenty and I think it's totally fine, especially on DraftKings, then yeah, Walker is definitely a priority target for me. But if I already have a running back or running backs, I don't feel terrible about passing on it. All right, let's get to this week's fallers. Marquise Brown is down 2.2 spots on Underdog to 57 overall, also down 4 spots on DraftKings to 63rd overall. I think 2 things are happening here with Marquise Brown. First, this data, the ADP change data, is from Sunday night. So we started to capture the fallout of the injury. On the first play of the preseason game with the Chiefs, Marquise Brown, they get the ball to him and he gets tackled, kind of lands awkwardly, dislocated the SC joint in his shoulder, going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. He's questionable for week 1. The second thing going on here is there's just been no news whatsoever on the Rashee Rice suspension. Some rumblings that maybe he avoids the suspension altogether or it's really short. So Rashee Rice has been moving up a ton. He's up 5 spots on DraftKings in the last week to 55 overall, corresponding with Marquise Brown's going down. I mean, all this stuff is going to be accelerated massively now that Marquise is hurt. Hollywood's going to continue to sink somewhat sharply. Rice and Xavier Worthy are going to rise pretty sharply. I do think this injury matters for Hollywood's outlook, at least the first part of the season. He's a new player to the team. He's going to miss all of camp pretty much. It's a shoulder and a serious thing. He can't work with Mahomes. I had a bunch of Marquise Brown. I had 18% or so. I had taken some in 555s. Pretty frustrating. I like that spot for Marquise Brown. I thought he was really strong there in the 60s. I'll still take him if he gets to the 70s, but we'll see there. Rashee Rice is the one I certainly want most. If he doesn't get suspended or it's one game in the middle of the season, those middle round Rashee Rice shares are going to look like a smash, just absolute smash. And Xavier Worthy, I'm worried the ADP going to get out of control here because the narrative will be they have the same role. Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy are both small, fast guys. If Marquise is going to be out or limited, then Xavier Worthy is going to smash. I think there's some truth to that. The hard part is Marquise will be back early in the season, so I don't want to go nuts on Worthy. I did think it was a good sign for Worthy that he played with the starters in the preseason game Saturday, was out there to start the game in a 3 wide receiver set with Marquise and Rashee Rice. I don't think the Chiefs are going to do the same thing that they did with Rashee Rice as a rookie. They just coddled Rashee so slowly. It really cost them early in the year. Of course, they won the Super Bowl, so what do I know? But yeah, I'm certainly in on Xavier Worthy. Just want to be careful on price there. Second faller is Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta down sharply considering where he goes, down 4.6 spots on DraftKings to 37 overall. Honestly, I was somewhat confused all summer on Laporta's ADP when he was going, 30th overall, late 20s. I like him. I think our inputs for the rankings on him are good, but structurally, I don't think the gap between Laporta and Kelsey and then the McBride, Kincaid, Andrews tier is that wide. I also think Pitts, Kittle, Ingram all have paths to finish reasonably close to Laporta. I wouldn't rule out Jake Ferguson, David Njoku, Brock Bowers, who go way, way, way later. So just the way I think about the tight end position, I've taken relatively little Laporta or Kelsey. I'm at 9% Laporta, 2% Kelsey. But now that these guys are really starting to slip, I'm going to get more. Like just a couple days ago, I was in a draft where I got Laporta at, I think it was 42 overall. And then McBride, Kincaid, Andrews all went between 46 and 52. When the ADP, when the draft position is that close, then yes, I think Laporta and Kelsey stuff makes more sense. Last faller to talk about here is Ben Sinnott. Ben Sinnott down 7 spots on underdog to 202 overall. I mean, Sinnott has just sunk like a stone. When summer first started, he was going laughably high, like 130s, 140s. We were roughly 50 spots behind market with our rank. Zach Ertz has gotten some hype since then. And by the way, I do think Zach Ertz will be the starter week 1 and play plenty. Remember, Cliff Kingsbury played Ertz over the MFing Mackey Award winner and stud Trey McBride as a rookie in Arizona. And there's also been some talk of Sinnott playing fullback, H-back. But all this stuff has just gone too far. Now we're talking 200 overall on both sites for a guy who went 53rd overall in the actual NFL draft and has a reasonably compelling receiving profile. I don't love Sinnott. I don't love him naked, but I take a ton of Jaden Daniels, and Sinnott really fits there now that he goes so late. Prefer Jaden Daniels with McLaurin or Dotson mostly, but Sinnott opportunity cost is just quite low now. That is going to do it for this week's Market Monday. Be sure you're subscribed to the show on iTunes or YouTube. It is free, and we have a ton coming up. Last week, we had man versus machine, Harmon on wide receivers, Silva's ranking changes. This week, we will have Stefania Bell on injuries. We will have the auction strategy show, and we will have news/ranking changes. Oh, second week of preseason, and preseason DFS and props starts Thursday this week. Really is so fun. Check out details on our product for that in the menu under the preseason tab. And don't forget about the early bird bundle in the subscribe tab as well. For producer Luke, for producer Jackson, for the most beautiful beast in the world, Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.